Hi Geraldine, hi Angela, how are you today?
Hello, Lisa. We're very well, thank you.
And
And you?
I'm great, thanks. Yeah, well, apart from not looking forward to my second vaccine, but it's got to be done. So, starting your family's association with the Barge started on May the 20th, 1937, when your aunt, that's you, Geraldine, paid a settlement of £2,643 and sixpence for the lease of the Barge Inn and surrounding land in Vange. So, do you want to tell me a bit more about that?
Of course. Well, Lisa, you've got to realise in 1937, that kind of figure, close to £3,000, was a great deal of money. And I would imagine in today's value, you'd be looking at paying somewhere in the region of 300,000 for a lease. Now, the size of the property back then was huge, because not only was there the pub, there was an orchard, a rose garden, a vegetable garden, and a bungalow within the property. So, it was not, she wasn't buying the lease of just the pub, it was of the whole area. And then as the years went by and the new town developed, other sections were compulsory purchase, and the pub got smaller and smaller and smaller till it was the size that it is today.
Yeah, I bet this has happened to many areas like that. So she ran it through the war, and first of all, she was with her husband, wasn't she? Harry,
Well,
is that right?
No, she didn't marry Dowie until after the war. During
No.
the war years, she was with her first husband.
Yeah.
His name was Harry Goodson. And it was actually from him that she first got some money to buy the lease on her first pub, because the Barge wasn't her first pub. She was a very entrepreneurial lady for her time.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because I've written about her, haven't I? Thanks to
You
your
have, yeah.
storytelling, and yeah.
And
So they did well in the war years, didn't they?
oh, she had what you can only call a good war. I mean, she sold everything you could get hold of, because people just wanted a bit of camaraderie, which a pub like the Barge then provided. And I think the icing on her cake was the fact that the army camp, a couple of miles down the road, was used to ship the British forces before they went over to France. And these were young men who didn't know whether they would have a tomorrow. So a lot of them spent their last nights before being shipped over to Dunkirk at the Barge.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So Dowie and her were very well known in Vange, weren't they? They were very strong personalities.
Oh, indeed they were. They were the Taylor and Burton of Vange. And Dowie Saunders was the local baker, and the bakery actually bordered onto the pub. So that was the other side of the pub car park. And they were larger than life characters, both of them.
Yeah. And I get Angela. Do you remember? Were you around at all when the aunt was around? Or
no, that was way before my time. But I've enjoyed so many of the stories, and it really was such an important time. And they played an important role in Vange and in Basildon as it grew.
Yeah.
As the town grew.
Can you move in a little bit, because you're, like, I see half your face. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. And do you remember your granddad Ted?
No, I never. He passed as well way before I was born, was it?
Yeah, sadly, my children didn't know either of their grandparents on my side, but they did both have wonderful relationships with their grandparents on my husband's side.
Yeah. So your dad took over. I think it was 1945. Your dad took over, and she wanted to retire, but she actually lived in the bungalow on the plot, didn't she? So
during the war years, my mum and dad had a little off licence in London, and Dad was part of the auxiliary fire service. Nice little story, Lisa. Dad had a quite little strangely shaped head, and he during the war, it being in the AFS, if you went out on any of the appliances, you had to wear a helmet. and they didn't have one that fitted him. So the only way he could remain a member of the AFS, they made him the mess manager in charge of all the supplies. And so as a result of that, my dad also had quite a lucrative and very good war. Thank you very much.
Oh. So when they started running the pub, I believe it was 1945. Your mum was pregnant with you.
Yes,
her name was Angela, is that right? No. What was your mum's name?
Her correct name was Alice
Yes.
Amelia.
Yeah.
But she never liked the name Alice Amelia, and she was known to everyone as Angela.
Oh.
So that's how we've got Angela, not
Yeah.
Alice.
And this is why you named your daughter Angela.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I see. And do you know what? I didn't ever realise that until now. So they did, like you talked about, you know, you and your husband, they did a lot for charities and they did a lot for the community. And, you know, I haven't really heard that about people running pubs before until I've talked to you. I didn't realise that, you know, was that something individual with your family, with the pub?
No, it was nationally. Outside of, in recent years, the lottery, it's actually pubs that have raised the most amount of money to support charities, both locally and nationally. I mean, a lot of pubs were part of larger groups within the licensed trade.
Auxiliaries.
Ladies auxiliaries that ran events. And in fact, I'm still a member of the Ladies Auxiliary, but sadly, we now only have about 2 pub landladies in it because we're all either retired or, sadly, community pubs have all gone.
Yeah. And so I know you are not so much. Did your aunt do things for charity so much, or was it more like your father and your mother who did that sort of thing?
I think it really started with my mum. My aunt was purely a businesswoman.
Yeah.
And it was really my mum that started off doing a lot of work with the local old age pensioners and the schools and Sunday schools and the church. So my mum started it, and then I kind of took over, and then my own children helped me.
Yeah. So do you remember any sort of particular sort of things that stand out when your dad and your mum ran the pub? Any sort of particular stories that sort of stood out, or events or anything like that? I know one thing that happened. He had the after the war party, didn't he? And I've got a black and white photograph of that, haven't I?
That was what we won one of our big national awards for, was when we recreated that atmosphere, 40 years later, and we did a celebration, a bit of VE Day. It was an amazing day in the pub. I don't think they were did quite as much as maybe my generation did, because they were still struggling in the aftermath of the war to run a business. And I suppose I had the luxury of not having to face war years or worrying about, so I could sometimes use the fundraising as to bring people into the pub. It not only did it have a good effect on the charities that we supported, but it also brought trade to the pub.
Yeah. And you were going to go in a different direction, first of all. You were training in drama. You went to RADA. You were RADA trained, weren't you? And sadly, you can tell me the story about that, about your mum, poor mum.
I did stage management, not acting. I always fancied myself as a bit of an actress, but back then I was very overweight, and I used to actually weigh 18.5 stone. And back in those days, the only role models for actresses were to be like Hattie Jakes. And I never wanted to be someone that was laughed at. I wanted to be the heroine, and because I couldn't do that, I decided to do stage management. And what that course taught me was how to be a good event organizer. And that has so stood me in good stead with running the events that I did from the pub, because it taught me how to put on a show.
Yeah. And as life sometimes, twists and turns of life, things happen, don't they? And sadly, your mum died very suddenly. and you came in and you helped your dad, and you used all your skills to help your dad.
That's correct. I mean, I was only 20 when my mum died, and I just finished my drama training. I'd had a year as a red coat at Butlins, which was amazing. And I was just about to decide where I was going and what I was doing. And suddenly mum died and dad was struggling. And I thought, well, hey ho, here we go. Let's give it a go. And I'll be a pub landlady. And 43 years later, I'm still the pub landlady.
Yeah. It was a cerebral hemorrhage, wasn't it? It's very, must have been a terrible shock for you all. And you all pulled together, which was lovely. And so then you started another thing that I wondered I just reread the article that I did in beginning of 2020. What happened to your dad? Did he retire when you and your husband took over, or did he?
No, he just was quite elderly, and he just took a back seat. Graham did that's my late husband, did all this sort of physical work. I did the staff and the promotions, and dad just did the books for many years. And then he sadly died, and Graham and I took over. But I suppose really, when I eventually lost Graham far too young, I would never have survived without Angela
giving up. The same
kind of similar scenario.
Kind of history repeated.
Really. Was it just Angela? Was it your son as well? Became licensees?
They both became licensees.
Yeah.
But because the problem was that as I was a local magistrate, you couldn't be both a magistrate and a licensee in the same area. So I didn't want to not be a magistrate because I thought I was doing a lot of good work in the community with that. And Angela and David were both working at the time. And Angela gave up her career and came in the pub with me, because otherwise it would have gone because it was right about at the time when we turned over for people having to have personal licenses and premises licenses, and often you needed to have a licensee on the premises at all times. Well, I couldn't have done that without Angela, so that was how Angela come to be in the pub with me.
So have you two got any stories about, people who were sort of regulars at the pub, or anything that happened at the pub that you want to share?
Oh, where do you start?
Oh, so many
characters. Characters. There were just so many of them, and they were all, places. What used to upset us all a little bit was because the Barge was right in the centre of Vange. Anything that happened in Vange, rightly or wrongly, got associated with the pub. And, if there was an incident in Vange, even though it may have had absolutely nothing to do with the pub, it was always reported as outside the Barge or near the Barge.
Yeah.
So we picked up an awful lot of slack from people that never ever visited the pub, who thought that was the image of what went on inside the pub, and it so wasn't,
There's so many football teams and camaraderie and charitable days where we did the pram races up from Tesco's and things. And Christmas Day used to get up, and we always open Christmas Day, and from the moment you open, there was 20 deep at the bar, and you just didn't stop. All families and friends just having a lovely time.
Christmas night, we would sort of invite anyone who was on their own. We never, if any of our customers were on their own at Christmas, we just used to say, oh, well, stay.
Stay with us.
That's lovely.
Yeah, it was a lovely atmosphere, and they were just great people, and the teams were incredibly competitive. Our quiz team used to beat all the really clever, solicitors, and, we used to go in the Basildon quizzes, and our football team used to win, and they really were incredibly competitive.
Yeah. There were just so many characters that it's difficult to pick just one, because they've all impacted our lives in different ways, haven't they?
I think in the article mentioned, I think it's Jimmy someone,
Oh, Jimmy Banks.
Jimmy Banks, yeah.
Jimmy Banks was drinking in the pub on the day I was born. And when my mum came back from the hospital, and well, obviously it wasn't Basildon Hospital, then we were in Chelmsford Hospital because Basildon Hospital hadn't been built. And he was there drinking right up until when he died, and not just him, but his whole family, his children, his grandchildren, his great-grandchildren. And that was what it was like at the Barge, you know.
Yeah. Is he still around now, Jimmy?
No, sadly not. No, but his sons are.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I would get stopped in the street sometimes and people say to me, oh, you're Geraldine, you used to know my great-granddad, or used to know my granddad, you know?
Yeah, definitely. When I was studying for my first book, Basildon Through Time, sometimes people did talk about the Barge and about your family. It's quite legendary, like your family quite legendary, really, you know, who run the Barge for 70 years. And, yeah.
When I had first bought this house, it needed a repair done to the flat roof. And I got this young man come in, and as he came in the door, he saw this big sort of collage picture that I've got of the Barge. And he went, oh, my granddad used to drink at the Barge. And it turned out that his granddad used to sell horses in the Barge years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so, you know, there's so many people that have got really long associations with the pub.
Talking about horses, Dowie had, there's a picture I've got in the book of Dowie with a horse in the bar.
Oh, Enoch.
There's something about horses in the bar in like history. There's always, there's one of the, in Langdon as well, there's a horse that was in the bar. That was another photograph, that people like to bring horses in bars then.
Well, it wasn't a common occurrence.
No. But that was a bit different. Yes, because he used to head up the Vange Carnival, didn't he? And that was his horse for doing that.
Yes, he was dressed as John Bull.
Yes, right. Yeah, he was very, very well known, and I've come across him in a lot of other history books too, local history books.
He was such a character. You know, he could be a little bit on the scary side. You know, because the word I would use was probably formidable. You know, as was my aunt, you wouldn't argue with her. You know, she was real old school pub landlady with, you know, diamond earrings that hung down there, and you know, she was very. Always you go, auntie's coming, you know.
Somebody else had the same effect, I think.
She taught me how to get 5 half pints out of a quart, you know, because that was how you made your little edge, you know, when you did a mixed drink. So, you know, you charged for 4, but you actually got 5 out.
Yeah. And do you miss it now? Do you miss the Barge? Do you ever sort of look back and think, oh, I miss that, or?
Well, it's incredibly sad to see the building as it is today.
Yeah.
I miss the people.
Yes.
I miss the good people, and there are so many, if they listen to this, that I don't think realise how much they impacted us and at hard times kept us going. But as for the actual, because it did become difficult, didn't it?
Hard work. I think for me, the kind of change first started when we had the all-day opening.
Yes,
as my children were growing up, we used to close in the afternoon, and their dad used to go and pick them up from school. We would all have a meal together, and we had a degree of good family life. We had nice holidays, and then with the all-day opening, that was just at a time when people had no more money to spend. And so you took the same amount of money, well, I suppose a bit like they're facing now, same amount of money with increased overheads, you know. And it wasn't an easy time, and things just got harder. And then of course the smoking ban, and which it did impact pubs like the Barge.
And the price, putting the prices up as well. They did that too, didn't they?
You had no control over really what our prices were, and then compared to local working man's clubs and things like that, we couldn't compete, and we would get challenged quite a lot saying, why is your beer so expensive? And it was kind of like how we had to make ends meet, and it wasn't because we were trying to strike people up.
No, I mean, Angela's incredibly right, because, you know, we were paying a huge rent to Enterprise Inns, all the maintenance on the building, Sky alone. I mean, when we first had Sky in the pub, none of the local houses had it. So whenever you got a good football match in, we packed out. But within 5 years of that, everyone had Sky. So they were watching the football at home and getting their beer from Tesco's.
And charging us thousands to show it.
Yeah.
No, I think the hardest thing I've had to come to terms with, I mean, the Barge was in our family from, as you've said, 1937 to 2007. And I really felt it was part of me. And we'd never owed money on it. We paid everything to different breweries. Sometimes it had been owned by breweries, by banking corporations, and eventually it was owned by Enterprise Inns. And when my late husband died, I really, really tried to buy the freehold, bearing in mind that it had been in my family for 70 years. And they wouldn't even enter into negotiations. They wouldn't even talk about it.
No.
Wouldn't consider it. So they offered me two options. Either renegotiate a lease in my own name or mine and Angela's, or go and walk away with nothing, after 70 years. And so the only option we had was to do the lease. And we're very grateful for the support and help at that time from Angela Smith, Baroness Smith now, who was our Member of Parliament. She was amazingly helpful, and she ensured that we got a very fair deal from Enterprise Inns, and then we were able to 3 years down the line sell the remainder of our lease on, and I was able to retire at least with a little something from the Barge after all those years. But if they'd have let me buy it, wouldn't be in the pickle it's in now.
No, exactly. And I'd hate to think how hard it must be for people now running a bar or a restaurant. It must be so tough right now.
My heart goes out to them. And I was only talking this weekend to one of the Pitsea councillors, Gavin, and sorry, I don't remember his surname. And he was talking about the possibility if the council decided to take the building back over, it wouldn't be the actual purchase price that would be an issue. It's how much money now you would have to spend on it to make that building safe, secure, and able to use inside, because it's been just allowed to deteriorate to such an extent. Yeah.
So, and Angie, would you ever go ahead and run another pub, or would that be something you wouldn't, because of the conditions of today, really?
Well, conditions of today, and it is a lifestyle. It is your whole life has to revolve around that. And I think now I've been out of it far too long. I've got my two sons that it wouldn't be for me anymore. No.
Did you enjoy? Did you enjoy growing up in a pub? Was it fun?
Yes and no. I mean, we had some really, really fun nights, and I think there was a couple of times when Mum and Dad had gone away and we had a few lock-ins that we probably shouldn't have had. but we had there was some amazing times, and I was very fortunate to have it. Provided some brilliant holidays. It provided me with so many other things, that like great Christmases and relationships, and being able to speak to anybody in any walk of life, and being able to empathise. It did give me so much, but it was difficult because your life was on show the whole time. Everyone, because as well where the bar was in relation to where we lived privately, if like you're a teenager and you're having an argument with your mum upstairs because you hadn't tidied up your bedroom, the whole world heard it. Whoever was downstairs drinking heard it. So then there was always that, it wasn't just your mum you had to face. I then had to go out and face the whole bar. Or for instance, if you had your heart broken by someone, it was the gossip of the pub. It was everybody talked about it, and you had to kind of go and face everybody all the time. So there was things like that was really, really difficult.
Yeah. Do you think
Growing up.
could you compare? Would you think the old Vic in EastEnders is quite realistic like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because it is. And for some people, your life was their entertainment. And it was sometimes, and you had a lot of fake friendships that just wanted to be your friend because of who you was, and having the pub and things like that. Obviously, it was a novelty. But like I said, I did get some amazing relationships from it, and I met my husband there. So that's one good thing.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't have my boys either. So yeah, so it did give me a lot of pluses, but it wasn't easy.
Yeah.
But I did get more from it than I didn't.
Yeah, I totally agree with Angela there. The pluses really outweigh the minuses. You know, it was unique. It's when you know, looking back at some of the information you sent me, Lisa, about the history of the Barge, what an important building that has been in this area. You know, the different things, you know, from courthouse to brothel, you know, it's been lots of different things, often supporting the community in many different ways. And just to see it being allowed to rot is beautiful.
It should be used, I think, for something to serve the community of Basildon, whether it's the youth community, somewhere to go for youth and education, information, citizens advice area. It should, I think, personally, be used something, because it is such a part of the community and Basildon's history. It should go on to serve, that building should go on to serve the people of Basildon and Vange.
Yeah, and it could be done, but it's just the amount of money that it would take to convert it into community use. You know, it could be a cafe, it could be, you could access health visitors.
I believe it has been taken over, hasn't it?
From what I understand, it is still now owned by the Muslim Trust.
Yeah.
But there's struggling to agree, from what I understand, usage and the fact that the pub itself has got very minimal car parking. You know, and somebody, and I don't know who's done this, has put this amazingly well-structured fence around everything. So someone has clearly fenced it off, and there's signage from a groundworks company up, but nothing much other than pulling a few outbuildings down has happened.
Yeah.
So I really don't know what is happening with it.
Yeah, I suppose as things hopefully get back to normal, we'll see what will happen. I think, you know, it's a bit of a strange time, so they're probably in limbo at the moment. So we'll see what's going to happen in the future. It's been lovely talking to you. Is there anything else you want to talk about or add? We've still got some time, you know.
Okay. Well, we ran some unusual events from the Barge. I mean, one of them that we did was called the Hampton Court Challenge, and it was the year of the maze that year. And so we had teams of 3 that had to get into the centre of the maze and back out in the fastest possible time. That raised a lot of money. We did.
What's the maze? Where was the maze?
Hampton Court. You know.
Oh, Hampton Court. Oh, okay.
And that was a bit of a challenge, because as it was a royal palace, you had to get you could only have a company sponsor it that had the royal crest. And fortunately, that was when Gordon's Gin had just moved to Basildon and had the Queen Mother's coat of arms. So Gordon's Gin sponsored it for us. And that was a very successful event called the Amazing Challenge. We did a fun run from Hadley to Basildon. We were helped with that by Basildon Lions. That won a national award for raising the most amount of money from a single event. Did have a little bit of a dramatic start, because that one was sponsored by Watney's, and the lady from Watney's managed to shoot herself in the foot with a starting gun. So we were only talking about that the other day. Yeah, we've run loads of different
and the village fair, which we did every year, didn't we, for a few years.
Working with the church, you know, and community working together.
St Chad's?
Yes, St Chad's, yes. When David Eaton was indeed the vicar there. Yeah, we had some great times, you know. When David Eaton turned up one day with the Archbishop of Canterbury, you know, you don't imagine the Archbishop of Canterbury to be having a beer at the Barge.
It was a surprise, wasn't it?
Yes, we've had a lot of lovely people help us, you know, and we've been very supportive, like as I said before, Angela Smith, and before her, David Amos was a great supporter of all the charity work we did. You know, they were both, I mean, I know there were, one was Conservative, the other Labour, but both of those individuals were incredibly supportive of the community, irrespective of what their political aspects were.
Yeah. That's good. People don't always realise that, do they? People are so quick to criticise politicians in particular, and they don't see that, you know, don't look at the wider view, what they actually do, you know. No, they do a lot more work, particularly constituency MPs. Really, really good. Yeah, sorry, go on.
It's been a very challenging life, and you know, seen lots of different things. You know, I suppose, like you smile about my life behind bars. I suppose it was a bit of a unique combination, being the pub landlady and one of the local magistrates. You know, that was different. But it was good because I think people respected the fact that you were from the community and that you were a fair person.
Yeah, you was a real person, wasn't you?
Yeah,
you was able to take people and like empathise and know other like people's situations, that you was. They considered you one of them, really, didn't they?
Yeah, you know, I think it was the element of knowing the difference between someone who's made a mistake for which they are sorry and deserve a chance to move on, and someone who does actually really need to be behind bars, you know. I think that was it. Life at the Barge taught you to take anything on the chin and in your stride.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's very strong.
Yeah.
Oh, it's been lovely. Thank you so much.
Yes,
I have to go off and have my vaccine jab in a minute.
Well, pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, it's been lovely.
And good luck with your jab. And Angie's got to go and pick her boys up from school.
Yeah.
And
it never ends.
I'm just a lady that lunches now. So.
And I've read Angela's book about being in lockdown. I've read the book.
Yeah. Lovely. Raising some money for the NHS. So I've done another one actually. So hopefully I'd like to donate the proceeds, royalties from that to a mental health charity this time, because I do feel that this second lockdown has affected people mentally more.
Definitely. So is it published? Is it already published?
No, not yet. I'm just putting the finishing touches to it.
Oh wow.
So, okay. And then learning everything I learned from the first one, and then ploughing on forward, keeping myself busy.
And what about you, Lisa? Have you got anything else in the pipeline?
I have to go and get a job, but I'll come offline and talk to you about that. But so thank you very much for having me.
It's been lovely. Thank you.
I'll stop recording now.
Yeah.
Stop.